I want to move to the question that everyone is probably expecting, and that is, how are we approaching these key terms that we're using? When Joseph made the introduction and in our description of this session, we cited some of the recent scholarship over the years that call museums temples and sacred groves and places to connect with something higher, et cetera, et cetera. And even the introduction to the American Alliance of Museums Code of Ethics for museums and practitioners states that museums use artifacts to, quote, nourish the human spirit. So there's a lot of language here that invokes religion and spirituality. And I feel like the opposite, in a way, the opposite to you, Yvonne, that I am quite the newbie to religious studies scholarship. I love interdisciplinary work, and I'm so excited to learn from you and from Eric and your expertise in religious studies. So let's just take a little time and explore these terms. So when we think about museums, what do we mean, or what do you mean by religion or spirituality? And do you have any thoughts about how these two terms relate? And are there any other terms that resonate for you? Like Ben, you mentioned magic. Eric, you said transcendence. Let's just open up for a little while this conversation about the terms. What feels good to you?
Yeah, I'll start since I'm the religion person. But you know, in some ways, this is the perfect religious studies question. This is what we do all the time. We debate the meanings and the expressions of the thing, and in the end, you know, the conclusion is that old joke. You know, like pornography. You know it when you see it. You know, we may not. You can't describe it, but you know, I think of religion as a kind of activity. You know, it's defined as a human activity, right? It's a way that humans orient themselves to things that are ultimate or things that are sacred and so forth, transcendent thing. But sometimes what's lost in our thinking about this religion thing is that it's also something that we associate with world making, world creating, right? Which is in some ways what the museum does too. And so, you know, I don't want to parse the distinction between religion and spirituality, although I would love to parse the distinction maybe later on between religion, magic, and maybe science, because all of those things are part of what the museum has become. But what's interesting is that I think people even in this session might assume that religious-oriented museums might be the places where one would go to have religion. But that's certainly not the case, right? Whatever we're calling these experiences. So I'd like to think, I always love to think more capaciously, more broadly about what religion can be. My dear friend Eric has invited me a couple of times to speak about religion at the extraordinary museum there. One of the first things I did, I talked about hats. Because of course, not only is sartorial adornment an important part of religion, and I talked about African-American religions and hats, mainly men's hats, but the collections themselves lent themselves to that kind of interpretation. All this to say, one doesn't always think of religion and hats, or religion and food, or religion and so many things. This is where the museum can come to play. So this is why I'm excited about a broad understanding of religion. It's pushing back against more sectarian notions that religion is just for temples, churches, and certain groups, all right? But religion is something, maybe spirituality. Maybe that's the term that captures it.